If you're driving an SUV, are you feeling guilty yet?
I helped hijack an airplane.
I helped blow up a nightclub.
Ahead on Crossfire. Live from the George Washington University, Paul Begala and Tucker Carlson.
Welcome to Crossfire. Pay no attention to that persistent whining sound you hear from Capitol Hill. It's only Democrats. They finally realized this week that, in fact, they lost the midterm election. We'll ask tonight's guests, including Ralph Nader, what the Republican takeover of Washington will mean for the economy and for doing business on Capitol Hill. Later, Ariana Huffington will attempt to explain why, if you drive a sport utility vehicle, you're helping terrorism. But first, our Crossfire political alert. Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman makes almost every decision more in sorrow than in anger. It's his nature. But next week, Lieberman will be doing at least one thing with glee, announcing for president. On Monday, Lieberman will jump into the race for the Democratic nomination. Many would argue that Lieberman never stopped running once Al Gore put him on the ticket in 2000, but it actually goes farther back than that. As proof, Lieberman will launch his campaign at Connecticut Stamford High School, where he ran for president of the class of 1960, won, and simply kept going. Recent polls show that Lieberman is garnering significant support from black voters, which of course means he could prove a formidable challenger to the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Why are you laughing? It's true.
Of course he does. Lieberman brings a lot to the field. He's most hawkish on Iraq, calling for invasion of Iraq long before even Bush was. But I tell you this, he is chapping me lately because he's gone months, maybe, I don't know, a year, without coming on Crossfire and answering tough questions from you, and some tough ones from me, frankly. If Lieberman wants to be tough enough to take on Bush, you got to be able to be tough enough to
I'm not calling him ahead. I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, President Bush Day, speaking of our president, likes to trot out carefully screened and scripted yuppie families to demonstrate the effect of his tax cut. He calls them tax families. He uses them to argue that his tax cut is not only for the mega rich. So I thought, fairness, we'd take a look at how two mega-rich families fare, specifically the Bush and Cheney families. The Bloomberg News Service reports that Mr. Bush would have saved a total of $44,500 on his taxes last year if the new Bush tax cut had been the law of the land at the time. Dick Cheney does even better, pocketing an extra $320,000 a year from the Bush tax cut. Now, look, none of this is to say that the president and the vice president designed their tax cut to benefit themselves. Rather, it just happens that the people who benefit most are corporate kingpins and quick buck artists who get rich by insider deals and looting failing corporations. When asked by Bloomberg to comment, Mr. Bush noted that his wealth is in a blind trust. Then he laughed his ass off. Unbelievable.
Actually, I think that's exactly why he passed the tax cut. It's to make money. I think that's why he ran for president. It's a money-making scheme the president's come up with. Paul, that is absolutely ludicrous. The argument that only Mark Rich and people like, is going to get rich from this tax cut is insane. And in fact, as we'll talk about later in the show, it is rich people who pay the taxes.
No, actually it's not. We'll talk about
Actually, it is. The FBI is under fire tonight after it was revealed that an all-points bulletin the Bureau issued last week was based on a hoax. As it turns out, 5 members of a terrorist cell did not sneak across the Canadian border into the United States. The men did not exist. There was no plot. How did the FBI get it so wrong? By getting its information from the Canadian government, which in turn got its information from an accused smuggler named Michael Hamadan, who apparently made it all up. The Canadians say they gave Hamadan a lie detector test. American officials, however, point out that a Canadian lie detector test is quite different from the American version. Under the Canadian polygraph system, authorities threaten to feed subjects to a polar bear unless they absolutely promise to tell the truth. Apparently, it doesn't always work.
See, you never know. You know, a couple of Molsons, maybe loosen them up, be like truth serum. That could work too. On this, though, this is a really, really tough call. I'm not a big fan often of the FBI or the Bush administration, but they put the information out, turned out to be false. Still better, I think, to try to give us information that we can
I agree with that, but it also points out a potentially weak link in the system, which is other countries. You need to have, it's true, you need to have countries that have their act together and who are on your side in the fight against terrorism. I'm not sure Canada always is.
Oh, of course, Canada always is. They're a great ally. Well, the University of Maryland researchers have released a study of almost 6,000 Maryland homicide cases over 2 decades. They concluded that there is an enormous racial disparity in the application of the death penalty. The study, reported in today's Washington Post, concludes that black people who murder whites are twice as likely to be sentenced to death as white people who murder whites. And black people who kill white people are 4 times more likely to get the death penalty as black people who murder other blacks. The study's director concluded, quote, The kind of disparities we're finding are systemic. They cannot be identified on a case-by-case analysis. Still, Maryland's new Republican governor, Robert Ehrlich, has pledged to reinstate the death penalty and to decide on alleged injustices on a case-by-case basis. I think it's
Actually, the study itself is sort of ludicrous because it doesn't take into account the nature of the crimes, which is key, of course, in sentencing. However, I think there is a real case to be made against the death penalty. It's a case that needs to be made head-on, right? Not through these dumb side channels, it's bias, etc. If it's immoral, if government shouldn't be killing people, just say so. Just make the case. That's what I think
government shouldn't be killing people.
I think liberals ought to make the case directly rather than with these phony
This
studies.
is an important study, nonetheless.
One of the last Democrats in the entire American South has announced his retirement tonight. Senator Zell Miller of Georgia released a statement saying he will not run for re-election in 2004. Miller, thoughtful to the end, says he will leave his seat immediately after the election so that his successor will start out with a seniority advantage under Senate rules. Even Democrats concede that Georgia is now a Republican state and that their party cannot even hope to hold on to the seat. And so, just one question remains. Will the Republican who replaces Miller next year despise the leadership of the Democratic Party as much as Zell Miller despised it? That may not be possible, which means that Democrats may be gaining and Republicans may be losing one of their most capable spokesmen.
I love Zell Miller. As you know, I've worked for him for many, many years. I'm desperately close to him. He's the greatest governor Georgia ever produced and leaves a terrific legacy. But he also leaves a very deep, strong Democratic base. No Democrat ever told you they're going to lose the seat. He has to follow him. Get this list. Mark Taylor, very able Lieutenant Governor. Kathy Cox, the Secretary of State. Thurgood Baker, the first African-American Attorney General in that state, a huge vote getter. Maybe Max Cleland will come back after being trashed by the Republicans. Democrats will hold that Zell Miller seat, in no small reason because of what Zell Miller did to build the party.
If I could just ask the producers to save this tape.
Absolutely.
For November of 2004 so I can mock you then. And I look forward to
You
it.
save that tape and you will see how wrong you are. By the way, Republicans want to put up Ralph Reed, the incredibly unctuous, slimy chairman of the Republican Party down there, former Christian Coalition dirtbag.
Unctuous, slimy, and
dirtbag.
dirtbag. Okay, get him on the issues, Paul. That's where you're scoring.
Perfect preparation.
Get him on the issues.
Perfect
Attack him on his
preparation to be a
ideas.
Republican senator.
Slimy dirtbag. I like it.
Undercover, speaking of slimy, under cover of darkness last night, our president sneakily renominated all of the proposed federal judges who had been rejected by the U.S. Senate last year. The group includes some of the finest minds of the 12th century. Apparently that's par for the course for Bush. According to a new book written by David Frum, a former Bush speechwriter, Mr. Bush's White House is downright hostile to intellectuals. Bush White House, Mr. Frum writes, quote, has a dearth of high-powered brains. One seldom heard an unexpected thought in the Bush White House or met someone who possessed unusual knowledge, unquote. Truly frightening revelation about any White House. Conspicuous intelligence, Mr. Frum goes on to say, seemed actively unwelcome in the Bush White House. Now, Frum calls the president himself, quote, often uncurious and as a result ill-informed, unquote. No great shock there. But Frum sees Bush's greatest redeeming quality, his genial, friendly, everyman nature, as phony. In private, Frum writes, Bush was not the easy, genial man he seemed to be in public. Uncurious, ill-informed, anti-intellectual, and not very nice. That's what his friends say about him.
Well, I will grant you, Paul,
amazing,
that President Clinton did have what you termed unusual knowledge. But I think the fact is that all America is better off that George W. Bush, whatever his faults, was president on September 11th and not Bill Clinton. And I think even you deep down know that. And I think most people, Democrats, Republicans, are grateful for that because they realize that his qualities are the ones needed to respond to a crisis of that
Like
kind.
Clinton couldn't have found his way to a bunker in the side of a mountain in Omaha? That is
actually
the way that Bush and the Republicans try to politicize 9/11 is really, really outrageous. It was a terrible tragedy. All Americans suffered, and for Bush to try to play political color,
It's not outrageous to point out that some people are better at dealing with crises like that than others, and President Bush was the perfect man for that crisis, and President Clinton would have been a disaster.
As you yourself wrote, you yourself wrote a column, Tucker, saying he went and hid in the side of a mountain when Rudy Giuliani went to the site of the trade centers.
Unlike President Clinton, who would sit in unable to make up his mind for hours and hours upon a time, years in some cases, clarity of vision is what a leader requires in situations like that, and you know it.
So Clinton would still be pondering, maybe we shouldn't strike back, huh? That's such a load on, please. Look, both the Democratic and Republican parties have unveiled programs to help revive our economy, but House Majority Leader Tom DeLay today said that he considers President Bush's $674 billion price tag maybe a little low. He calls it the floor and not the ceiling. Congressman DeLay says he wants to tack on additional tax cuts. When asked if the price tag could top $1 trillion, the Republican Majority Leader responded, who knows? Stepping into the crossfire to debate the rival economic plans on Capitol Hill, consumer advocate, former Green Party presidential candidate Ralph Nader. He is the author of Crashing the Party, How to Tell the Truth and Still Run for President. With him, former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Bob Walker.
Mr. Nader, thanks for joining us, as always. All the rhetoric, and doubtless we're about to hear some more, about how this tax proposal is a sop to the rich, a payoff to the rich. I just want to put into perspective the role of the rich in the American economy. I want to read from a recent editorial from the Wall Street Journal. Here's what it says. In 1999, 553,380 taxpayers out of hundreds of millions anteed up 28% of tax revenue. IRS data from 2000 shows that the top 5% of taxpayers, those with incomes of $128,000 and higher, paid over half the total tax revenue. Since it's exactly the rich who disproportionately pay most of the income tax, it would be impossible to lower the taxes without benefiting them disproportionately. It's their money. Isn't this fundamentally true? Rich people are the ones who pay, who keep America afloat.
No, you got a bad premise there, Tucker. Since the rich people have grabbed off more of the wealth than they deserve by keeping the minimum wage low, by preserving all the corporate tax subsidies, handouts, giveaways, all the tax loopholes, now you want to take that unfairness and use it as an argument to reduce their taxes further? I mean, have you ever taken a course in logic?
Well, so I guess, well, I think, Mr. Nader, it's a different kind of logic. Your logic, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that the entire system, that is the United States of America, is so intrinsically corrupt that rich people, just no matter who they are, don't deserve to be rich. That money is by definition stolen. That's what you just said, unless I'm mishearing.
They don't deserve to have more power than they can responsibly
No, we're talking about
exercise.
money, not power here.
Yeah. Power leads to money.
Okay, but without getting too abstract, please answer.
No, it's not abstract. If you control Congress through all kinds of campaign money, etc., you're going to get Congress to give you all these goodies that you don't deserve. Aren't you worried about the 47 million workers in America who work full-time, can't earn a living wage? Aren't you worried about
Without question, but you're still changing the subject, not
Well, no,
answering the
let's go back to this. First of all this tax stuff that Bush has put forward is not really designed to lift the burden. It's designed to stimulate the economy, correct? Why do you have to stimulate the economy when there's huge unused capacity, when there's plenty of capital around, and when interest rates are at historic lows? The issue is to stimulate economic demand. And the way you do that is you start a public works program by getting rid of the, paying for it, by getting rid of the huge hundreds of billions of dollars of corporate welfare that Cato and Heritage and other of your think tanks have documented and decried. And second, you lift the minimum wage. It's $5.15 an hour, federal, Tucker. It should be $8 an hour if it was indexed since 1968, the way members of Congress have indexed and more their own salary.
Let me get Congressman Walker into this. Let me start with first principles. I do think it's agreed upon that the big problem in the economy is corporate overcapacity right now. Corporations have more capacity than they are able to sell right now. This is why they're operating at some of them at as little as 75% of capacity. That is 1 out of 4 of their plants being shut down. Given that, is the best way to stimulate the economy by targeting wealthy investors or middle-class consumers?
Well, it's by giving money to the investment class. And the investment class includes the wealthy and the middle class, because a lot of the pensions, the college funds that people have socked away at the present time are involved in the stock market. And so it's extremely important to give those investors some payback for the risk that they take.
See, this, I think, is the heart of the argument, and I think you stated well and honestly. Democrats in the main believe that the economy is driven by middle-class consumers, and that the way to tap that capacity is to give more money to the master sergeants and maids and ordinary folks who will actually spend it. See, rich people tend to save their money, God bless them. My folks, our folks, would tend to spend that money. That would stimulate the economy, make Bill Gates all the richer. What's wrong with that?
But the way in which they get the money to spend is by having a job and having a good job. The way in which they have a good job is to have investment money behind, risk behind that investment, so that you can, in fact, produce the jobs in this economy so people do have the money to spend.
Okay, let me just give you a hypothetical.
This is all about growth and jobs.
We all agree with that. You're the CEO of the Walker Widget corporation, and you've shut down 1 out of 4 of your plants because you have to. You're not a mean, heartless guy, but you have to because you have too much capacity. I give you a tax benefit of $1 million. Are you going to reopen those plants?
Absolutely.
No, you don't have consumers to buy your widgets, Bob.
That's just wrong.
Give the money to widget purchasers. They'll buy it.
One of the things that I would want to do is I would want to participate in the global economy in a way that increases my productivity so that I'm competitive worldwide.
But you just said you'd open new plants without customers.
The way in which you do that is by having the investment money to put into that kind of productivity. And the investment money comes out of stockholders and comes out of the pension funds and a lot of other people who are investing in the future of this country. Now, the problem is, if there is no investment in the future of the country, there is no future. In my view, it is extremely important for us in the future to assure the people who are willing to take the risk of putting their money out there the chance to earn enough on that money that they, in fact, then spend money in the economy, and also give the middle class in this country an opportunity to have jobs and spend the money in the economy.
But the pension funds and 401ks, when they get dividends, they're not taxed anyway. That's okay. This thing that Bush is doing on dividends doesn't affect them. They get tax-free dividends.
Yeah, but the fact is that what you have is a lot of 401ks that have become 101ks at the present time because the stock market has dropped so substantially. What this is going to do is raise the level of stock market participation as a result of the tax exclusion for dividends, and that in fact will increase the amount of wealth in the 401ks, which will be an extremely valuable thing to huge numbers of middle-class families.
But Ralph,
economists don't agree with that.
well, if we could just get back quickly to the
There's plenty of capital.
I want to get back to the class war.
There's plenty of capital. That's the point. It's drowning in capital. The issue is demand. You got to give those workers more money so they can buy more things.
And the way you give them more money is to have them have a job.
No, you raise the minimum wage to what it should be, adjusted for inflation.
When you raise the minimum wage, it does not do a thing with the big companies that you keep talking about. It absolutely destroys the small businessman, the little guy who is trying to make a living, that in many cases is not making more than about $20,000 a year himself in profits in his company.
So you think there should be a declining minimum wage, which is what happens when you don't adjust it to inflation?
I think
but it isn't declining. It's $5.15. It should be $8.
I think in a stagnant economy that to impose extra costs on small business will simply drive that small business out of the market and will decrease the number of jobs in the country. That, in fact, will drive us more toward recession and depression. And I think small business in this country is the bedrock on which we build the future economy.
There's a problem with your argument, and that is that they've raised their prices, small business, since 1968. You'll agree, right? But the wages have not been keeping up. And the point is, they've been getting a windfall. A minimum wage is designed, if you work hard in this country 40 hours a week, shouldn't you be able to live on it?
I think it's extremely important that we produce the kind of, first of all, education system that provides trained workers for business so that they can, in fact, pay above the minimum wage. One of the real problems in business today is that the education system isn't working, and so what you end up having to do is retrain workers when they come through the door, and that is, in fact, a cost to the business over and above the minimum wage that they're paying. You could pay them more if you didn't have to educate them.
Before we go, I want you to respond to the most interesting thing I've seen all week. This is the Secretary of Commerce, Don Evans, and he's explaining the effect of the President's tax proposal. Listen, this is interesting.
This is a progressive tax cut, which means that those at the higher end of the tax scale will be paying a greater percentage of the taxes after this is implemented than before the tax cut was implemented. So it's a progressive tax cut. Those that are taking on a larger percentage of the burden now will take on an even larger percentage of the burden after this tax cut is passed.
So if you follow that, the top 5% already pay more than half of all taxes in the United States. After this plan is enacted, they will pay a higher percentage. I would think that's just the sort of class warfare approach you would favor.
It's like Secretary Evans just finished reading George Orwell. When you have a $350 billion 10-year windfall on dividends, 1%, the top 1% of the people in this country account for about 40% of the dividends. And if you knock out the dividend tax-free pension funds, it's even higher than that.
Please wait, hold on.
So
please address the question.
How does that cut the tax?
Hold on. What do you think of the fact that as a percentage of taxes paid, the rich will pay more after this is enacted? That's a very interesting point that cuts exactly against what you've been arguing.
The arithmetic doesn't add up. Look, how can you, if the dividend tax exemption goes to mostly the wealthy people. How can you say they're paying more? These people who are bringing in huge dividends from 1 million shares of General Electric or IBM or whatever, they're not going to be paying any taxes on that. So how can you say that it gives them a greater share of the burden?
On them.
Yeah.
Let me show you.
But where is that money going to go is the question.
Let me show you a couple other statistics from the Tax Policy Center. They looked at two different things. Well, they looked at all of the quintiles. Who gets what out of the Bush plan and the Democratic plan? First, let's look at the middle of the middle class, the middle 20% of Americans. They put this up on the screen. Under the Bush plan, they get about $265. Under the Democratic plan, more than 20% more, they get about $337. So more bang for the buck for the middle class in the Democratic plan. But now let's look at the top 1%. Let's see how they fare.
Tax policy center.
Under the Bush plan, $24,428. Under the Democratic plan, $518. That's the difference. This is why Bush has cost 6 times more, because he's given it away to the mega rich.
Well, you know, the point is that I don't know where they started their statistics. Most of the statistics that come up with those kinds of figures start with the idea of including people who pay no income taxes as a part of the overall mix.
They're not Americans?
Well, sure, they're Americans.
Tax relief to all Americans, Bob. But if you won't cut the payroll tax, you won't cut the excise tax, you won't cut the property tax, you won't cut the sales tax. That's what poor people pay. You only cut the rich man's taxes. Why?
I'm all for cutting payroll taxes and doing some of those kinds of things too. But I will tell you that this is an income tax issue, and so you cannot look at who doesn't pay income taxes at all. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons why the numbers that Tucker was citing work is because you end up having people who are now paying taxes who are no longer going to pay income taxes. They drop completely off the rolls when the numbers go down, as they do in the Bush plan. Again, if you take a look at the figures that include all of the taxpayers, the figure that the Bush administration has is that a middle-class family will receive over $1,000 of tax benefits out of this plan.
But we started this discussion with you saying
that's a pretty good return for a middle-class family to get $1,000 back. For most middle-class families, $1,000 is worth a lot of money.
We started this discussion with you saying, this is your phrase, not mine, that the economic plan should be targeted at the investor class. Now you're telling, all of a sudden, now the Bush plan helps the middle class, even though I think...
But I included the middle class and the investor class. They are a part of the investor class at the present time.
Their investments are already tax-free on dividends.
A vast number of middle-class people are in fact, well, they're doing that, but there are also middle-class people out there, Paul, who actually buy stock.
Well, look, this is an assortment. This is an assortment of gimmicks and tips is the Bush plan. If you want to create good-paying jobs, distribute them throughout the economy, especially in the inner city. You have a public works program to start repairing America. The schools, the clinics, the mass transit, the buildings. Now, wait. And how do you pay for that? How do you pay for that? Just what the Cato and other institutes are showing the savings are. Huge military boondoggles condemned by retired admirals and generals, including Secretary Rumsfeld, said he can't get rid of some of these Soviet-era weapon systems, and hundreds of millions, but he failed. Because of Congress and the Lockheed Martins of the world.
He's working at it.
But he's admitted failure. But anyway, the other thing is the corporate welfare. You should be against corporate welfare. The mining subsidies, the Bermuda tax haven.
Will you answer one question quickly before you go on? Everyone's against corporate welfare.
But that's where you get the money to create those jobs.
And this is very clear, you're holding up the increase in the minimum wage as a panacea, or at least as a way to boost the economy. What percentage of Americans employed full-time receive the minimum wage? Do you know?
About 8 million. Number one, 8 million.
8 million. 8 million. 8 million. What percentage of Americans?
But if you raise the minimum wage to where it should be, if it was indexed,
it's tiny.
It would be 25 million.
Okay.
At $8.
I understand.
At $8
well,
an hour.
unfortunately, we're just going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back in just a minute. We'll ask our guests about some of the other challenges the new Republican Congress is enacting, including a new way of slicing the pizza rule, whatever that is. Later, the candidates in the calendar, ready or not, the 2004 presidential race is off and running. When you fill up your SUV's tank, are you also filling up the terrorist wallets? That's doubtful, but we'll hear from someone who's worried nonetheless. We'll be right back.
CNN Tonight, exclusive. Princess Diana's former lover, James Hewitt. Will he sell Di's love letters to him? Only on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 90.
At King's Furniture and Appliances, you could get your appliances free. Shop all the competition. Bring us their best price. If we don't beat their best price, we'll give it to you free. Come celebrate our 25th anniversary sale going on now. Save on a Whirlpool washer. 3-temperature, 3-load size selection was $348, on sale for $199. Match it with a Whirlpool dryer. Regular permanent press mid-cycle was $348, now $154. King's Furniture and Appliances, 2821 Ross Clark Circle Southwest in Dothan, where you could get your appliances free.
At the end of every year here at Jim Skinner Honda, we always write our used car inventory down as much as allowed by law, and then we have a clearance sale to move them out so we can start fresh for the new year. Well, folks, we're into that clearance sale now. We've got over 20 certified Hondas, over 40 domestics, trucks, pickups, SUVs, you name it, we've got them. They're all rolled down, and they're ready for you to come get them right now when we clear them out. That's at Jim Skinner Honda on the Circle in Dothan, Alabama.
This is CNN.
This is an amazing age. This is an amazing age. We learn something new every day.
You're living in the age of Fosamax, when it's actually possible to help reverse bone loss and strengthen bone. Fosamax Once Weekly is a hormone-free tablet for postmenopausal women at risk for or with osteoporosis. Fosamax is clinically proven to help reverse bone loss. Increases in bone mass were seen as early as 3 months. You should not use Fosamax if you have certain disorders of the esophagus, are unable to stand or sit upright for 30 minutes, have severe kidney disease, or low blood calcium. Before use, talk to your doctor if you have stomach or digestive problems. Stop taking Fosamax and tell your doctor if you develop new or worsening heartburn, difficult or painful swallowing, or chest pain, because these may be signs of serious upper digestive problems.
One pill a week can help reverse bone loss.
Ask your doctor if Fosamax Once Weekly is right for you. This is the age of Fosamax.
This is an amazing age.
Helping reverse bone loss.
Welcome back. Now that the Republican 108th Congress has come to town, things are going to be done a little differently. House Republicans have already changed ethics rules, including the so-called pizza rule. It allowed lobbyists, charities too, to send free food to members of Congress and their staffs, but not in excess of $50, hence pizza. The new rules should enhance the quality and quantity of food in congressional offices. Tonight, we chew it over with consumer advocate and former presidential candidate Ralph Nader and former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Bob Walker.
Bob, first, it is telling that the Republican Congress, which won't raise the minimum wage, drags its feet on extending unemployment benefits so that at Christmas time, 1 million Americans lost their unemployment benefits. Moves, as General Patton would have said, like poop through a goose. He didn't exactly use that word, but you get it. To change the ethics rules just to lighten their burden just a little bit. This pizza rule that Tucker pointed to is just, to me, more emblematic than the bigger one, which is they passed a rule that now says that any group that can register as a charity can fly a congressman to a resort and wine and dine him or her. And the chairman of the Ethics Committee, Republican chairman, was not even consulted on this, and this is what Joel Heffley, the Republican chairman of the Ethics Committee, told the Washington Post. Heffley said he, too, has concerns about the measure to allow charities to pay for congressional travel to resorts. It does open the gates to abuse, he said. Why are they doing this?
Well, I have concerns about it, and I think the Ethics Committee will look into it, and I think that's probably the right thing to do. But the fact is that for some charities, members of Congress are an attractive thing to have come to their events and so on. It helps them get people there. It helps them raise money for the charity. If, in fact, there are strict rules put on it that assures that the charity itself is actually paying the bills and that you do not have corporations who are paying for a lot of this travel, and that all of the money from the event goes to charity and doesn't go somewhere else. I mean, there may be a way of writing rules that actually makes that into a useful kind of thing. But I think it's something that has to be looked at. The pizza rule, in all honesty, is one where the members of Congress aren't going to benefit from that. It's going to be some young staff that stays in there late at night, and instead of being charged $50 against their limits for the pizza,
and why Ralph Nader
work food stamps.
No, but wait a second. No, these guys work a lot longer hours than you and I do.
Guys that work all
and
night.
they get paid a lot less than you and I do. And Why are you trying to make life as unpleasant for them as you possibly can? Why not let them have their pizza? Who cares? They are public servants.
There's petty corruption, all kinds of goodies. Yeah, all kinds of nice fruit baskets and mild liquor and comes up there. The main thing is what Bob pointed out. It's these corporate-sponsored charities which become golf tournaments and fancy resorts. And the members of Congress and their families are ferried out, all expenses paid, to schmooze, right? Wait, and this led to scandals in the early 90s, to national television exposés, and watch this, it led to 99% of the House putting these rules into effect, which they're now starting to unravel.
So
99%.
Are you saying Congressman can be bought with a fruit basket or a round of golf? Is that what you're saying?
It's all part of the matrix, isn't it?
Yes, then.
A little bit here, a little bit there.
But I asked the question on the Hill today. I said, you know, will the corporations be able to pay for the members of Congress to participate? And the answer is no. I mean, the charity itself is going to have to actually put the money up in order for this to happen.
What's to prevent the Arsenic Information Institute, lobbying for more arsenic in the water, which President Bush supports, what's to prevent them from registering a charity with the IRS? It'd be a nonprofit, it'd be a charity, and flying all of us out there, the members of Congress.
Can you ask the question in any more pejorative way? Or
if I could, I'd come up with it, because no, I think that's legalized graft. I think I think you make a good point about the pizzas. But
the point,
flying these guys after
the point is they have to qualify as a 501c3.
But anybody can, as long as they make the rules.
Well, they've got to be able to show that they actually put the money toward a charitable cause.
You watch how fast
But the donors are the corporations. See, the main thing is the decline of ethics. In 1995, 99% of your colleagues, Republican Democrat, put these rules in.
I helped do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that's the reason why I'm interested.
You have a very strong record.
No, that's exactly right.
We're almost out of time. But very quickly, tell me, the Democrats and the people on the left were so upset about this. Where were they when Senator Torricelli was getting free suits and antiques and watches from?
Good point.
Where were they, though?
They were looking the other way.
That's appalling,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Aren't you ashamed and kind of disappointed?
Ashamed? Then what are you talking about? You think the Democrats are on my back?
That's the spirit. That's why we like you, Ralph Nader.
Let's drive Torricelli out of the Senate. Oh, already been done. Bob Walker, former Congressman from Pennsylvania, thank you very much. Ralph Nader, former Green Party presidential candidate, thank you both very much. Next, in the CNN News Alert, Connie Chung will give us the latest details on investigations into a pair of air tragedies. After that, we will consider the ever-growing field for Democratic candidates in the primaries and caucuses. Before we drive off into the sunset, though, Ariana Huffington asks, what would an al-Qaeda terrorist want you to drive? Stay with us.
Join Carville, Begala, Carlson, and Novak in the Crossfire. For free tickets to the live Washington audience, call 202-994-8CNN or email us at cnn@gwu.edu. Now you can step into the Crossfire.
Police Heroes. In a book that celebrates and honors some of the most heroic police officers in the nation, award-winning investigative correspondent and author Chuck Whitlock presents one of the best crime and punishment reads to date.
You really don't have the time to get scared. You just react the way that you're trained.
Police Heroes by Chuck Whitlock. Available at Amazon.com and in bookstores everywhere.
They both worked their way up the ladder. Same executive perks, same six-figure salaries. So why does one look forward to early retirement, while the other looks forward to the 15th and the 31st? Some people already know our financial representatives excel at a lot more than life insurance. Northwestern Mutual Financial Network. Are you there yet?
Tonight on CNN Primetime at 8, he was willing to help prove a baby was cloned. Now he says it could all be just a hoax. Dr. Michael Gillen speaks out. Then at 9, an exclusive with Princess Diana's former lover, James Hewitt, live for the hour and taking your calls. And at 10, U.S. troops on drugs? Newsnight investigates why the U.S. military wants to find ways to keep our troops awake for days. Connie Chung, Larry King, Aaron Brown. It's all part of CNN Primetime tonight.
Good evening. I'm Connie Chung at the CNN Broadcast Center in New York. Crossfire is back in 90 seconds, but first, these stories top our news alert. Hospital officials report 5 survivors from the crash of a Turkish Airlines plane in southeastern Turkey today. not including a 2-year-old girl now declared brain dead. Officials say Flight 634 from Istanbul was carrying 80 people. It went down on approach to an airport in extremely foggy weather. The cause is under investigation. Authorities report recovering the voice and flight data recorders from the crash of a commuter plane that killed all 21 on board today in North Carolina. The U.S. Airways Express turboprop, operated by Air Midwest, was trying to take off when it crashed into a hangar at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. A man who's been sitting in a U.S. jail for 9 months without being charged lost another legal battle today. A federal appeals court ruled the government can keep holding Yasser Islam Hamdi as an enemy combatant. The court said it is undisputed that Hamdi was caught fighting with the Taliban, and that alone is enough to keep him in custody. More than 2 million laid-off American workers will get another 13 weeks of unemployment benefits. President Bush has signed a bill passed today by the House and yesterday by the Senate. Workers whose benefits lapsed in December will get them retroactively. And those are our top stories at this hour. I'll be back in 30 minutes. And now back to Paul and to Tucker in Washington. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Connie. What's on your show tonight?
I'm going to talk to the scientist and freelance journalist Michael Gillen. You know him. He's the one who's neck deep in that controversy over the supposed first human clone. And Gillen has suspended his review of Clonade's claim of a cloned baby girl. He says it may be just a hoax to publicize the Raelian religious movement. And I promise you, he's not going to be wearing one of those space outfits.
Nice. Well, I promise you, Connie Chung's going to make him squirm. I can't wait to see the interview, Connie. Thank you very much for that update. We look forward to seeing you tonight. Connie Chung, ladies and gentlemen. As we reported at the top of the show, sources tell CNN that Connecticut Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman will join the field of Democratic presidential candidates next week. And if all of this talk about 2004 seems just a tad early, consider this. Today's edition of the political newsletter, The Hotline, reports that Iowa Democrats may set their caucuses as early as January 17th of 2004, just a few days more than 1 year from today. And the New Hampshire primary could be January 27th. Here to talk about the already steamy presidential campaign, Democratic consultant David Axelrod and Republican strategist Terry Holt. Guys, see you, Ax. Thank you for coming.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Terry, how are you?
Nice to see you again.
David Axelrod, thanks for joining us. I want to read you a quote, particularly, I thought, thoughtful quote about the problems that Dick Gephardt might have if he runs for president. Well, let me go through the motions anyway. I love this part. The question is, can he get the stench of Washington off him? The challenge for Gephardt is how much is he seen as the heartland populist candidate and how much is he seen as an institutional Washington candidate.
Right.
The genius behind that, of course, was you. Tell us about the stench of Washington on Dick Gephardt.
Well, it was more commentary on Washington than Dick Gephardt. I want to make that clear. I feel like Ralph Cramden in my big mouth and all that. But, you know, I think that I was around in 1988, and Paul was as well, when Gephardt ran for president. I was working for another candidate. I was impressed by the campaign that he ran. He was a very, very convincing populist from the heartland. If he can recapture that, I think he can be the nominee of the party. But the challenge is to be seen as that and not as the former minority leader. And that's really the point I was trying to make.
Well, here's the problem. I would submit that there's another problem with the Gephardt candidacy, and that's that he is seen, at least here in Washington, as someone who was so annoyed by the loss in the midterm that he sort of took his marbles and went home. He's announced he's not going to run again in 2004. I want to read you a quote from him himself. Mr. Gephardt, I wish we had won seats in the midterm. If that had happened, I likely would have stayed in the leadership. Now what? I mean, this is a man who is asking us to vote for him for president, but showing no resolve. You know, if my party isn't in power, I'm leaving. I don't want to play.
But you know, the fact is that out there in the real world, people aren't concerned about this stuff. This is an inside Washington deal. People are concerned about their health care. They're concerned about educating their kids. They're concerned about their jobs themselves. You guys just talked for some period of time. And if he speaks convincingly on those issues, I don't think people are going to say, yeah, but you said that you would have stayed on as minority leader. I think that's inside baseball.
That's a good point. Terry Holt, let me ask you about Joe Lieberman, who today let it be known to our sources anyway that he's going to file papers to become a presidential candidate. He was in all the papers today. Let me read you a quote in the Baltimore Sun talking about the president's economic plan, these kitchen table economic issues that Mr. Axelrod was talking about. Here's what he said. President Bush's plan is an irresponsible, ineffective, ideologically driven wish list that is oblivious, it should be, typo, to the particular problems our faltering economy is facing. That's music to my ears as a Democrat. This is exactly the case that you're worried about Democrats making against the Bush economic plan, isn't it?
Well, I'm not worried too much about this field of Democrats at this stage. I mean, the Democrats don't seem to have made any progress since the last election, where they were all over the place, they didn't have an agenda, and they had a horrible election day. You know, this guy changed every position he ever held to run for vice president last time, whether it was school choice.
He did win.
Tax cuts.
Well, he came in first. Got more votes than Dick Cheney.
But there's another gentleman sitting down at the White House, whereas the Republicans have been focused. They've had an agenda that's gone.
About that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the fact of the matter is the Republicans are united behind this president. He's been consistent. He's had a pro-growth, national defense message. It's getting out. People like him and trust him. And this crowd doesn't stand for anything. That's a big problem.
Actually, this is even more music to my ears than Lieberman getting on a more populist economic program, because it is the telltale music of hubris, my friend. The guys running Bush's political operation are longtime friends of mine. They are brilliant. But you know, they're starting to believe their own press, aren't they, Terry? You're not scared of any of these Democrats, are you? Tell me that. Make me happy.
Well, I'll tell you, they're all liberal as the day is long.
Oh, sure. You can't. They can't touch Bush. You just relax.
I will tell you.
Eat right and exercise. Bush will get reelected, brother. Don't worry.
I love to have elections about differences. And this will be a great election about differences. The president's for less taxes. Dick Gephardt, who I think is the strongest candidate in this race right now, has voted for every tax increase in his career and voted against every tax cut. So I like those differences.
That's actually not true. I mean, he in fact voted, one of the issues that was raised was that he voted for the Reagan tax cut in '82, which you probably applauded.
I'm wrong. It was 20 years ago.
Here's the music I heard.
So in 82.
The odd music I heard is that you say he's running on a pro-growth platform, and we've lost 2 million jobs. I don't know how much more growth we can stay.
Wait. I want to read you a quote from my... I may differ here a little bit. Actually, I like some of the candidates, one in particular running on the Democratic side. I want to read you a quote from one of them, the Reverend Al Sharpton. I'm qualified, probably more qualified than any other person who was expected to be on the Democratic ticket in 2004, because I actually have a following and I speak for the people. David Axelrod, do you take Al Sharpton seriously?
I think he's going to be a serious player in the sense that he will arrive at the convention and he will have delegates, and I don't think anybody should kid themselves. He does speak to and for a constituency, and I've done races in New York. I've seen Reverend Sharpton. He is a smart, clever person. I think he's been on this program probably, and you've seen it yourself. But you know, will he be the nominee? Obviously not.
Will he
be
have
a
a
player?
primetime speaking role in Boston at the Democratic convention?
Well, I don't know. You know,
do you
so
think?
far as I know, they haven't worked out the speaking.
Well, but if he has delegates, he'll have to speak, won't he?
Well, he will probably have to speak, and you know, and I don't think that it's any different than past conventions in our party or your party. People of different ideological stripes get a role.
Well, you have to have charisma to get elected president, and there's a charisma deficit in this group. Al Sharpton has plenty of charisma. You ought to think about it.
Amen. That's right. Al Sharpton is going nowhere
need
fast,
some of that.
except on to Crossfire, where we love having him. But you know, he just had his first event in New Hampshire. He introduced 75 people.
That's great.
Come on.
That's actually not that
They got to hang a pork chop around the guy's neck to get the dog to play with it. No, he ain't going nowhere except in Tucker's
Living
mind.
room discussions. It can't get
Oh, that's great.
He's listening to the people.
Yeah, right.
Paul.
Look,
the people.
The CBS, a rival network, the CBS News folks, conducted a poll this week, and they asked people, this is the Achilles heel of Bush. It's why he is going to be a one-term wonder like his daddy. They asked people this question: who do the Bush administration policies favor? 59% of us say the rich. 11 say the middle class, only 2 say the poor, and only 23 say everybody. 60% of Americans say that Bush favors the rich. This is the Achilles heel for him, isn't it?
Well, let's go with the class warfare when we don't have an agenda. I mean, the fact of the matter is the president's passed a historic education reform package. If we didn't have Tom Daschle and Dick Gephardt running...
Did he fund that?
The Democratic
It was a year
Party
ago
in
today.
Congress.
Did he fund it?
No, of course.
No, he didn't.
There was a 9-10% increase in education funding last year.
He broke his promise. The law says how much money should be in it. Bush underfunded it by billions of dollars.
And we have increased funding for education every year. The Republicans have been the majority in Congress. I think that says
Clinton was
more
in
about
the presidency for most
this is more about our priority in education.
David Axelrod, very quickly, we're almost out of time. Edwards, John Edwards in North Carolina, a year ago being talked up as this great force. Really, I could show you the polls, but we don't have time. He's really fallen in the estimation of fellow Democrats. Why is that? Why is he blown up so early?
Well, because we play the inside game. He had a bad
few minutes on Tim Russert's show, and that got the chatter in class going. I think he recovered a little bit last week on Stephanopoulos' show. And, you know, your poll of yesterday was somewhat surprising to me because he was doing pretty much as well as everyone else. I think Edwards is a resourceful guy, and I wouldn't count him out of this race. His problem is the experience issue, and he's going to have to find a persuasive way to deal with it.
It's going to be fun to watch. David Axelrod, Terry Holt, thank you both very much. We appreciate it.
Good job, thank you. Good job.
A viewer who's almost graduated from Saturday morning cartoons has found some new superheroes. We'll get to that in our Fireback segment. But next, a commercial you may be seeing over the weekend isn't designed to get you to buy more beer, or as it turns out, more SUVs. We'll show it to you. We'll be right back.
Avaya. What is it? First, what it's not. A Caribbean island? Welcome to Avaya. Yeah! Avaya! Everybody say Avaya! Avaya! Avaya is a state of pure communications perfection. Here you find IP telephony for about the price of a standard PBX upgrade. And the biggest, most experienced communication services team, hands down. Oh, still not sure what Avaya is? Ask over 90% of Fortune 500 companies. Go on. They know. Reach Avaya, a higher plane of communication.
Tonight on CNN Primetime at 8, he was willing to help prove a baby was cloned. Now he says it could all be just a hoax. Dr. Michael Gillen speaks out. Then at 9, an exclusive with Princess Diana's former lover, James Hewitt, live for the hour and taking your calls. And at 10, U.S. troops on drugs? Newsnight investigates why the U.S. military wants to find ways to keep our troops awake for days. Connie Chung, Larry King, Aaron Brown. It's all part of CNN Primetime tonight.
BrazilianExporters.com.br, the most complete directory of Brazilian exporters. Come and do business with us.
Introducing New America Online 8.0. With hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
You've got mail.
With 8.0, I can customize my email.
AOL's new parental controls I can set up for each one of my children. Now AOL searches are faster than ever with Google.
The customer service is free and it's 24 hours a day.
Call now and get 1,025 free hours for 45 days. There's no commitment and you don't even need a credit card.
America Online has so much more.
New AOL 8.0 with hundreds of new features. There's never been a better time to try it.
CNN Tonight, exclusive. Princess Diana's former lover, James Hewitt. Will he sell the love letters Di wrote him? James Hewitt live for the hour and taking your calls. Only on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Welcome back to Crossfire. We're coming to you, as we do every night, from the beautiful, wonderful George Washington University here in downtown Washington, D.C., home of the Colonials. The biggest trend in the auto industries are all on display this week at the North American International Auto Show in Detroit. And sport utility vehicles are so hot that even Porsche is getting into the act. The Porsche SUV is perfect for off-roading to your children's soccer games. If you're in a hurry, it goes 0 to 60, get this, in 7 seconds. Chances are Ariana Huffington will not be driving one, and not because they go for 58 grand a pop. She is a syndicated columnist, the author of the soon-to-be-published book, Pigs at the Trough, How Corporate Greed and Political Corruption Are Undermining America. She joins us from Los Angeles to discuss her concerns with SUVs. Ariana, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ariana, I want to show you something you've doubtless seen because you're behind it, but I'm not sure all our viewers have seen it yet. It's so over the top, I want to put it up. This is one of the ads against SUVs. Here it is.
This is George. This is the gas that George bought for his SUV. This is the oil company executive who sold the gas that George bought for his SUV. These are the countries where the executive bought the oil that made the gas that George bought for his SUV. And these are the terrorists who get money from those countries every time George fills up his SUV.
Now, I guess, Ariana, one of the many things that bothers me about this spot is the moral equivalence it implies. You know, drive an SUV, hijack an airliner, both cases you're committing terrorism. That's just silly and wrong, isn't it?
Do you think that the Bush administration's drug war ads are silly and wrong? Because
yes.
the moral equivalence...
Yes, I do.
Well, I haven't heard you say that before tonight, but the point is that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to equate smoking a joint with funding terrorism. We are making an infinitely more credible link, because the truth is that driving an SUV is a lifestyle choice, and to have the sale of SUVs go up by 6% in the last year at a time when we are being told by the administration that we are at war, that we need to increase our oil independence, that we should not be beholden to terrorist harboring nations, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, Ariana, let me ask you a more fundamental question. Why this crusade with people? Homelessness is up, poverty is up, the uninsured is up. We've got enormous problems in this country. Why'd you pick this?
Well, we can have multiple crusades. Right now, we believe that the time after September 11th is for us to increase our oil independence. I mean, look at the way we're kowtowing to Saudi Arabia. We are actually basically allowing a nation that's harboring terrorism, that's subsidizing suicide bombers, that's sending quote-unquote charitable contributions to hijackers. We are basically allowing them to get away with everything just because we need to continue to feed our oil addiction. And you know, isn't it amazing that the McCain-Kerry bill was defeated in the last Congress that would increase our fuel efficiency standards? Isn't it amazing that the administration is suing the state of California for daring to impose more fuel efficient standards? It doesn't make any sense.
But Ariana, nobody is defending Saudi Arabia or its role in terrorism, etc. I guess I object to the singling out of SUVs because, as you know, pickup trucks don't get any better mileage than SUVs. The elderly cars that were made 20 years ago, driven mostly by poor people, they get even worse gas mileage, but of course poor people can't afford to buy fashionable and very expensive hybrid cars. Why pound on poor people just because they can't afford it?
Tucker, let me get the facts straight. I'm driving a hybrid car. It costs $17,000. It does 52 miles to the gallon. If you want to buy a Hummer, on the other hand, at $50,000, that's how much it costs. It's 9 miles to the gallon, and they can't keep it in stock. And the
But
reason
your
for
car
that,
can't drive over anything, though. Can it?
Okay,
I bet it can't.
Here is the other fact. There are, it's true, some people who need to go off-road. It's an infinitesimal proportion of the people who drive SUVs. You know why? Because there is a ridiculous tax loophole that basically means you can depreciate 2/3 of your SUV. Like you can depreciate $25,000 of a $37,000 SUV. And it's this
Really?
unfairness, absolutely.
I'm going to do that. I had no idea.
Let me ask you
let me just say one more thing. The reason why is that in 2000 alone, the three automakers spent $37 million in lobbying. You have Andy Card, the chief of staff, who was the chief lobbyist for the automakers. Basically, once again, special interests have trumped the public interest.
Well, let me ask you, though, about the safety issue. That ad, it is like the drug ads, which I think are moronic because they're too attenuated. Okay, you're asking, you draw this linkage, here's George, and then there's the oil executive, and then there's Saudi Arabia, and then there's terrorists, and then you're asking somebody to make all of those linkages and see the safety threat of terrorism, and then ignore the obvious safety threat of putting them in a little $17,000 hybrid tin can. I mean, people are safer with their kids in SUV, aren't they?
You are way behind the curve. I highly recommend you read Keith Bratcher's book. He was the New York Times Detroit correspondent, and his book is phenomenal. It actually explains step by step why the SUVs are actually much more dangerous. They're 4 times as likely to roll over as ordinary cars, and they are 3 times as likely to kill their passengers as ordinary cars. This is one of the myths that Detroit has perpetrated, the safety of SUVs. I would like you to actually read the facts.
Well, I'm going to read your book.
Ariana, really quickly, can you give us 3 other crusades that you might undertake in the future to save energy, say asking people to live in tents, or can you take it one step beyond the SUVs quickly?
Actually, let me just say what we're going to do. We're going to stay on this crusade because all we need is a critical mass of people, and then we're going to be as successful as the designated driver campaign. Do you remember that campaign? Before that campaign, it was very chic and very macho to drink and drive. After that, it became socially irresponsible. We want the same change with SUVs.
Well, we will still like you better than the ladies from MAD, though. You have more of a sense of humor. Ariana Huffington, thanks for joining us from Los Angeles. We appreciate it. Thanks. Coming up in our Fireback, one of us gets a less than friendly invitation from some Canadians, that country to the north, the frozen north. We'll explain. We'll be right back.
If you'd like to fire back at Crossfire, email us at crossfire@cnn.com. Make sure to include your name and hometown.
CNN Tonight, he was willing to help prove a baby was cloned. Hear why he says it could all be just a hoax. Dr. Michael Gillen joins Connie, CNN Tonight, 8 Eastern.
We were there when you were struck.
I'm so sorry.
With the adventure of driving. The joys of marriage. The pride of home ownership. So now that you've discovered the rewards of a growing young family and you need more life insurance coverage than you can get through work, there's still no one better to talk to than the State Farm agent you've always trusted to care for your car, your home, and you. State Farm is there for life.
When you're looking for a way to improve the value and beauty of your home, start with a visit to Ansley's Building Materials, where personal service and professional assistance is the rule, not the exception. From a great selection of windows to locally built interior doors to beautiful entryway doors to permacast columns, Ansley's has what you need for your home improvements. Locally owned and operated for 25 years, Ansley's always provides friendly expert service. Ansley's Building Materials, 114 Zenith Road, where we're building Dothan one home at a time.
I bought my Explorer from David Money Ford because he always treats his customers just like they're part of his family. From sales to service, you can always depend on his employees to go the extra mile. I'm always treated special at David Money Ford, and after all, he did pay for my wedding. Thanks, Dad.
David Money Ford, a family tradition since 1972.
Your home is a reflection of you, of your world, and your place in it. So if you want to put digital TV entertainment in your home, why put this stuff on top of it? Comcast Digital Cable gives you all this on your TV without a satellite dish on your roof. So your beautiful home is still your beautiful home. Comcast Digital Cable.
Closed captioning provided by Oric 8-pound upright vacuum.
Looking for a lightweight vacuum that's really powerful? Try my Oric XL free for 30 days. Nothing gets by an Oric.
Welcome back to Crossfire. It's time for our Fireback segment. We invite you to go completely bananas and write us email, and you do. First up tonight is James Snell of Hanford, California. I'm tired of hearing the Democrats pull this class war crap, he writes elegantly. The Democrats have no vested interest in generating real economic growth as long as the economy can be used as an issue in the 2004 presidential election, and it shows. Well, I sort of agree with that. They do have an incentive to want the economy to go bad.
The Democrats,
and they'll admit it.
The Democrats under President Clinton generated 23.8 million new jobs. The Republicans under Clinton have cost us 2 million. I mean, under Bush have cost us 2 million
totally
jobs.
Untrue. I
No,
mean,
Democrats are
saying it every night doesn't make it any
proven
truer.
they're better at running the economy.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah.
Maryland, no last name, Princeton, New Jersey, writes, Paul, do you think President Bush read your book? Maybe he'll stop beating the war drums and do something with our economy now. Now, I don't know that the president's had time. I know he's a busy man. I may send him the Cliff Notes, maybe a comic version or something. He's too busy to read my book. I don't blame him.
How do you tell the Cliff Notes apart from the regular version? No, sorry. No, I'm a fan. I'm not beating up on your book. I'm not beating it. I'm in the book.
Tucker is in the book.
Yes, I am. By the book. Jason McCready of Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia, Canada, that's a foreign country to the north of here, writes, your comments about Canada, a foreign country to the north of here, saying that the U.S. needs another parking lot are totally out of line. Our Prime Minister punched out a fellow who bothered him, so lose your bow tie and head north to a place where men are men. Bring some friends.
Whoa. That's like Jason's a little lonely.
That's quite an invitation. That's an invitation makes me a little nervous. Men are men, bring some friends.
Bring your men,
Thanks,
bring
Jason.
some friends. It's lonely and cold in Sydney Mines. No. Here, Stephen Krieger in Winnipeg, another terrific Canadian City writes, Crossfire is my favorite show. Clearly an intelligent man, obviously a Canadian. When I was 8 or 9, I would watch superhero shows, and Crossfire reminds me of one of them. James Carville is Bald Boy, lovely, and Paul Begala is the Clinton Caper. They fight the evil Novak attack and his trusted sidekick, Tucker the Terror. This would be the perfect show if someone had some sort of super strength and lightning power. Stephen, it's obvious you haven't been watching. I do have super strength and lightning power, but you just haven't been watching.
Stephen is sitting alone in his bedroom with Spock gears on. I can just picture him. Yes, sir. A question.
With you, whatever that is. Yes, sir.
You indicated earlier the 8 million people in this country earning minimum wage were insignificant. Those are your words.
I didn't say that, and I think it's fewer than 8 million.
Okay, well, either way, do you really think the people who bag your groceries, wash your car, and cook your meals in Georgetown, are they really insignificant?
It goes without saying that they're not. I didn't say that, and that's quite a demagogic point to make, and I appreciate it. What I was saying was that the number of people in the economy who rely on minimum wage jobs as full-time employment is very small. It doesn't mean they're insignificant. It means raising the minimum wage is not going to change the economy. It's just an economic fact.
No, but Tucker, the key weasel word there is full-time jobs. Corporate America gives them these crummy, I won't use another word, crummy part-time jobs without benefits. That's why so many minimum wage workers are working part-time, because corporate America don't want to pay them benefits either. We ought to raise the minimum wage, have a health care plan to provide for them. Yes, sir.
Our dependence on oil in the Middle East is something that needs to be changed, but calling it terrorism if you drive an SUV is just crazy.
I agree with that. I think we tried to point that out to Ms. Huffington. In fact, it desensitizes people. I mean, it may be a good thing to drive an SUV, maybe a bad thing. It's a subtle conversation. There are nuances, valid ones, but to call everybody who drives an SUV an accomplice to terrorism sort of dulls our senses, I think, and it's a bad idea for that reason.
Speaking of dull senses, from the left, I am Paul Begala. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Tucker Carlson. Join us again tomorrow night for yet more Crossfire. Counting Sun tonight begins right now. Have a great night.